I never thought I'd be the guy telling a story like this. You hear about it happening to other people, some unlucky husband on the internet, some coworker trying to laugh through his pain over beers, some poor bastard who never saw it coming. But me? No. My wife and I had been married for 12 years. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our dumb fights about the same small things. Life wasn't perfect, but it was stable. Or so I thought. My name's Daniel, and up until a month ago, I was just another married guy working in IT, coming home to my wife, Claire, and our golden retriever, Max. We didn't have kids, though not for lack of trying. Claire was a nurse, and her schedule was all over the place, but we made it work. Or, at least, that's what I told myself. Looking back, I see the cracks now. The subtle shifts. The distance between us had grown so gradually that I didn't even notice it. She used to text me throughout the day random little things like, "Miss you" or "Can't wait to see you tonight." Those texts stopped months ago. I told myself it was just work stress. Our conversations at dinner became robotic. Instead of teasing and laughing, we had silence, interrupted by the occasional remark about the weather or a work story I only half listened to. But still, I ignored it. I told myself that marriages go through phases. That we were fine. That love changes over time, and this was just a quiet season for us. Then came the first real sign that something was wrong. It started small. Claire had a new habit of turning her phone face down whenever she set it on the counter. I noticed it but shrugged it off. She worked at a hospital, sometimes there were patient details or private messages from coworkers. Then, one night, she got up from bed to get a glass of water and took her phone with her. Again, nothing I normally would have cared about, except when she came back, she had this look. Like she'd just been caught doing something she shouldn't. Her eyes met mine for half a second, and I saw it, guilt. It was a flash, gone just as quickly as it came, replaced with her usual tired expression. "What's wrong?" I asked. She shook her head and climbed back into bed. "Nothing, just checking something for work." That was when I first felt it, that gnawing, anxious feeling in my gut that something was off. I pushed it away. I told myself I was being paranoid. But then came the real red flag. 2 weeks later. A Saturday. Claire was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, I wouldn't have even glanced at it. But I did this time. And that's when I saw the name, Tyler. I knew most of Claire's friends. I knew her coworkers. But Tyler? That was new. The message preview was short. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." My stomach twisted into knots. My skin felt hot and clammy. I just sat there, staring at that screen, unable to process what I was looking at. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't open the message. I didn't do anything except sit there like a complete idiot, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe it was a coworker she had dinner with after a shift. Maybe she had gone out with a group of friends and Tyler was being flirty. Maybe. The water shut off in the bathroom. I quickly looked away from her phone and pretended to scroll through mine. Claire stepped out, towel wrapped around her body, hair dripping, eyes meeting mine as she reached for her phone. For a split second, she froze. I watched as her fingers hovered over the screen, her breath hitching ever so slightly. Then, just as quickly, she forced a casual expression and picked it up. She didn't open the message. She just swiped the notification away, tossed the phone onto the bed, and started getting dressed like nothing had happened. And that's when I knew. A normal person, someone with nothing to hide, would have checked the message. Would have seen it and reacted naturally. But Claire? She just dismissed it. Like it wasn't important. Like she couldn't risk me seeing what was really there. The rest of the day, I couldn't focus on anything. I kept replaying that message in my head. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." It was direct. Too direct to be just a friendly conversation. But I still didn't confront her. Instead, I watched. I started paying attention. I noticed how she always kept her phone nearby, never leaving it unattended for too long. I noticed how she seemed distracted when we talked, like she wasn't really listening. And I noticed how, for the first time in 12 years, she started going to bed later than me. Claire had always been an early sleeper. But now she stayed up after I went to bed, scrolling through her phone, texting, sometimes sneaking outside for fresh air. And I kept telling myself I was being crazy. That changed the night I overheard her whispering on the phone. It was around midnight. I had gotten up to use the bathroom and, as I passed by the living room, I heard her voice, low, hushed, different. I stopped in my tracks. I know. I miss you too. My heart started pounding. I stepped closer, careful not to make a sound. No, he's asleep. He never asks questions. A soft laugh. Yeah, I can't wait either. The room spun around me. My hands clenched into fists. I should have barged in right then. Should have demanded an explanation. Should have taken the phone from her hands and seen who she was talking to. But I didn't. I turned around, walked back to the bedroom, and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling like a complete idiot. Because deep down, I already knew. Claire was cheating on me. I just didn't have the proof yet. And that was about to change. I don't know why I held on to hope. Maybe it was just easier to live in denial, to pretend that I hadn't just overheard my wife whispering to another man in our living room while I lay in bed like an oblivious fool. Maybe I was too scared to know the truth. But that didn't stop the thoughts from creeping in. The moment I closed my eyes, I saw Claire sitting on the couch, biting her lip as she typed out messages. I imagined her smiling at her phone the way she used to smile at me. I heard her laugh, the one she gave to someone else now. Sleep didn't come that night. And by the time morning arrived, something in me had changed. I needed proof. The first clue. Claire woke up before me, which was unusual. I could hear her moving around in the kitchen, humming lightly under her breath. It pissed me off how normal she was acting, as if she hadn't been whispering sweet nothings to another man just hours ago. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my anger in check. If she was cheating, I needed to be smart. I needed evidence. If I jumped the gun, she'd just gaslight me, call me crazy, make me feel like I was imagining things. So, I played it cool. Morning, I said as I walked into the kitchen. Claire turned, flashing me that easy smile. Hey, you're up late. I nodded, pouring myself some coffee. Didn't sleep well. She tilted her head. Everything okay? Lying came easier than I thought. Just work stress. She didn't pry. Instead, she pressed a quick kiss to my cheek, grabbed her phone from the counter, and started typing something as she sipped her coffee. I couldn't see the screen, but her expression shifted ever so slightly, a softness. I never thought I'd be the guy telling a story like this. You hear about it happening to other people, some unlucky husband on the internet, some coworker trying to laugh through his pain over beers, some poor bastard who never saw it coming. But me? No. My wife and I had been married for 12 years. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our dumb fights about the same small things. Life wasn't perfect, but it was stable. Or so I thought. My name's Daniel, and up until a month ago, I was just another married guy working in IT, coming home to my wife, Claire, and our golden retriever, Max. We didn't have kids, though not for lack of trying. Claire was a nurse, and her schedule was all over the place, but we made it work. Or, at least, that's what I told myself. Looking back, I see the cracks now. The subtle shifts. The distance between us had grown so gradually that I didn't even notice it. She used to text me throughout the day random little things like, miss you or can't wait to see you tonight. Those texts stopped months ago. I told myself it was just work stress. Our conversations at dinner became robotic. Instead of teasing and laughing, we had silence, interrupted by the occasional remark about the weather or a work story I only half listened to. But still, I ignored it. I told myself that marriages go through phases. That we were fine. That love changes over time and this was just a quiet season for us. Then came the first real sign that something was wrong. It started small. Claire had a new habit of turning her phone face down whenever she set it on the counter. I noticed it but shrugged it off. She worked at a hospital, sometimes there were patient details or private messages from coworkers. Then, one night, she got up from bed to get a glass of water and took her phone with her. Again, nothing I normally would have cared about, except when she came back, she had this look. Like she'd just been caught doing something she shouldn't. Her eyes met mine for half a second, and I saw it, guilt. It was a flash, gone just as quickly as it came, replaced with her usual tired expression. "What's wrong?" I asked. She shook her head and climbed back into bed. "Nothing, just checking something for work." That was when I first felt it, that gnawing, anxious feeling in my gut that something was off. I pushed it away. I told myself I was being paranoid. But then came the real red flag. 2 weeks later. A Saturday. Claire was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, I wouldn't have even glanced at it. But I did this time. And that's when I saw the name, Tyler. I knew most of Claire's friends. I knew her coworkers. But Tyler? That was new. The message preview was short. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." My stomach twisted into knots. My skin felt hot and clammy. I just sat there, staring at that screen, unable to process what I was looking at. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't open the message. I didn't do anything except sit there like a complete idiot, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe it was a coworker she had dinner with after a shift. Maybe she had gone out with a group of friends and Tyler was being flirty. Maybe. The water shut off in the bathroom. I quickly looked away from her phone and pretended to scroll through mine. Claire stepped out, towel wrapped around her body, hair dripping, eyes meeting mine as she reached for her phone. For a split second, she froze. I watched as her fingers hovered over the screen, her breath hitching ever so slightly. Then, just as quickly, she forced a casual expression and picked it up. She didn't open the message. She just swiped the notification away, tossed the phone onto the bed, and started getting dressed like nothing had happened. And that's when I knew. A normal person, someone with nothing to hide, would have checked the message. Would have seen it and reacted naturally. But Claire? She just dismissed it. Like it wasn't important. Like she couldn't risk me seeing what was really there. The rest of the day, I couldn't focus on anything. I kept replaying that message in my head. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." It was direct. Too direct to be just a friendly conversation. But I still didn't confront her. Instead, I watched. I started paying attention. I noticed how she always kept her phone nearby, never leaving it unattended for too long. I noticed how she seemed distracted when we talked, like she wasn't really listening. And I noticed how, for the first time in 12 years, she started going to bed later than me. Claire had always been an early sleeper. But now? Now she stayed up after I went to bed, scrolling through her phone, texting, sometimes sneaking outside for fresh air. And I kept telling myself I was being crazy. That changed the night I overheard her whispering on the phone. It was around midnight. I had gotten up to use the bathroom and, as I passed by the living room, I heard her voice, low, hushed, different. I stopped in my tracks. I know. I miss you too." My heart started pounding. I stepped closer, careful not to make a sound. "No, he's asleep. He never asks questions." A soft laugh. "Yeah, I can't wait either." The room spun around me. My hands clenched into fists. I should have barged in right then. Should have demanded an explanation. Should have taken the phone from her hands and seen who she was talking to. But I didn't. I turned around, walked back to the bedroom, and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling like a complete idiot. Because deep down, I already knew. Claire was cheating on me. I just didn't have the proof yet. And that was about to change. I don't know why I held on to hope. Maybe it was just easier to live in denial, to pretend that I hadn't just overheard my wife whispering to another man in our living room while I lay in bed like an oblivious fool. Maybe I was too scared to know the truth. But that didn't stop the thoughts from creeping in. The moment I closed my eyes, I saw Claire sitting on the couch, biting her lip as she typed out messages. I imagined her smiling at her phone the way she used to smile at me. I heard her laugh, the one she gave to someone else now. Sleep didn't come that night. And by the time morning arrived, something in me had changed. I needed proof. The first clue. Claire woke up before me, which was unusual. I could hear her moving around in the kitchen, humming lightly under her breath. It pissed me off how normal she was acting, as if she hadn't been whispering sweet nothings to another man just hours ago. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my anger in check. If she was cheating, I needed to be smart. I needed evidence. If I jumped the gun, she'd just gaslight me, call me crazy, make me feel like I was imagining things. So, I played it cool. Morning, I said as I walked into the kitchen. Claire turned, flashing me that easy smile. Hey, you're up late. I nodded, pouring myself some coffee. Didn't sleep well. She tilted her head. Everything okay? Lying came easier than I thought. Just work stress. She didn't pry. Instead, she pressed a quick kiss to my cheek, grabbed her phone from the counter, and started typing something as she sipped her coffee. I couldn't see the screen, but her expression shifted ever so slightly, a softness, a smirk. She was texting him. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to look away. Got a long shift today? I asked casually. Claire didn't even glance up. Yeah. Might be home late. I nodded, pretending to believe her. As soon as she left for work, I went to our bedroom and opened her laptop. The second clue. Claire was smart, but not that smart. She always logged out of everything, but there was one thing she forgot: her Google account was still signed in. I clicked on My Activity. My heart pounded as the page loaded. Her search history was interesting. Cheap hotels near downtown. How to clear message history on iPhone. Is it cheating if it's just emotional? That last one felt like a punch to the gut. I sat there, staring at the screen, my pulse racing. There was no more maybe. No more excuses. No more doubts. Claire was having an affair. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The stakeout. I needed more. A text, a call, a picture, something concrete. So, I did the one thing I never thought I'd do. I followed her. That night, Claire said she was working late. I acted normal, kissed her goodbye, and watched her leave. Then I grabbed my keys and drove after her. At first, it seemed like she was heading toward the hospital. I almost felt stupid, maybe she really was at work. Then she took a turn. Not toward the hospital. Not toward anything familiar. She was heading downtown. I kept my distance, my palms sweating as I gripped the steering wheel. She drove for about 15 minutes before pulling into the parking lot of a small restaurant. Nothing fancy, just a quiet little cafe tucked between some shops. I parked a few spots away and waited. A few minutes later, he showed up. Tyler. I didn't know him, but I knew his face. I recognized him from Claire's hospital Christmas party last year. He was another nurse, younger than her, fit, good-looking in that clean-cut way. I had barely spoken to him back then, had no reason to think he was anything more than a coworker. But now, I watched as my wife stood up to greet him, her face lighting up in a way it hadn't for me in years. She hugged him. Not a friendly hug. Not a work buddy hug. A slow, lingering hug, the kind where you breathe each other in. My stomach twisted into knots. They sat down, leaned in close, talked in hushed voices. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I didn't need to. She was looking at him like he was the center of her world. I had seen that look before. She used to give it to me. The final blow. I stayed long enough to watch them leave together. Claire didn't even check her phone, didn't even wonder if I had called. She was too busy with him. I followed them, careful, slow, calculated. And sure enough, they ended up at a hotel. A cheap, out-of-the-way place. I didn't need to see what happened next. I already knew. Breaking point. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, staring at the hotel entrance, my mind numb. I had my proof. There was no more pretending. No more excuses. Claire had made her choice. Now it was my turn. I sat outside the hotel for over an hour, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The neon glow of the riverside flickered above the parking lot, buzzing faintly in the quiet night air. I watched people come and go, travelers, couples, strangers, but all I saw was them. Claire and Tyler. My wife and the man she'd chosen over me. Every muscle in my body was tense, my mind playing an endless loop of what they were doing inside. I could have stormed in right then and there, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. I wanted her to have no way out. No excuses. No lies. So, I waited. At 11:42 p.m., the door finally opened. Claire stepped out first, her hair slightly messy, her shirt untucked. Tyler followed, his hand casually resting on her lower back as they walked toward his car. They laughed. My wife laughing with another man. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed my phone and snapped a few pictures, my heart pounding as I recorded them getting into separate cars. I watched Claire fix her hair in the rearview mirror before pulling out onto the road. She was going home. To me. The moment of truth. I made it home before she did. Max, our golden retriever, greeted me at the door, his tail wagging as he looked up at me, oblivious to the storm about to hit. I gave him a few mindless pats, my body moving on autopilot. Then I sat down in the living room, turned off all the lights except for one lamp, and waited. At 12:27 a.m., I heard the garage door open. Claire walked in moments later, sighing as she kicked off her shoes. She didn't even notice me at first. She stretched her arms, grabbed a water bottle from the fridge, and pulled out her phone, probably to text him. I cleared my throat. She jumped, nearly dropping her phone. Jesus, Dan. She put a hand over her chest. You scared the hell out of me. I didn't respond. Just stared at her. Her face softened. Why are you up so late? I didn't answer. Instead, I reached over to the coffee table, picked up my phone, and tapped the screen. I turned it around so she could see. The picture of her and Tyler leaving the hotel filled the screen. For a moment, she didn't move. Didn't blink. Her entire body went still, her face draining of color. I finally spoke. Had a good night? Silence. Her mouth opened, then closed. She swallowed hard, looking down at the picture like she could will it out of existence. Then she did exactly what I expected, she lied. Dan, it's not what you think. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh really? Then what is it? Help me out here, Claire. She shook her head quickly, scrambling for words. It's not what it looks like. We were just. Don't. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Don't insult me. She bit her lip, her hands shaking as she put her phone down on the counter. Dan, she took a slow step toward me. Can we sit and talk? Please? I didn't move. Talk? Like how you've been talking to him. She winced. Tell me, Claire, I pressed, my voice tight. How long has this been going on? She looked away. Look at me. I snapped. Her eyes finally met mine. And I saw it. Guilt. Shame. But no denial. No anger. No shock that I had accused her of cheating. Because she was cheating. 3 months, she finally whispered. The air left my lungs. I had suspected it. Known it. But hearing her say it out loud made it real. 3 months, I repeated, my voice hollow. I let out a bitter laugh. Wow. And here I was thinking we were just in a rough patch. She wiped at her eyes, but I didn't care about her tears. Was it worth it? I asked, my voice colder than I thought possible. Throwing away 12 years for a fling? Claire flinched like I had slapped her. It wasn't like that, she whispered. Oh, really? I crossed my arms. Then tell me. What was it like, Claire? Did he make you feel special? Did he make you feel young again? She let out a shaky breath. Dan, I didn't plan for this to happen. I scoffed. Right. You accidentally checked into a hotel with him? Tears streamed down her face. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she cried. I clenched my jaw. Then why? Why did you do it? She opened her mouth. Then closed it. And that silence told me everything. She didn't have an answer. Because there wasn't one. She had cheated because she wanted to. Because she could. And I had been too blind to see it. The turning point. Claire wiped at her face, taking a shaky breath. I never stopped loving you, she whispered. I laughed. Actually laughed. You don't cheat on someone you love. My voice was quiet, deadly calm. She took a hesitant step closer. Dan. Don't. I held up a hand. She froze. You don't get to touch me. Not after what you did. Her lips trembled. Please, let's just talk about this. There's nothing to talk about, I said. Her face crumpled. You're just going to give up on us? I stared at her for a long moment. Then I spoke the ugliest truth of all. You gave up on us the second you walked into that hotel. Claire broke. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. But I felt nothing. I watched her cry, and all I could think about was how many times I had missed her. How many nights I had reached for her in bed, only to find her distant. Because she had already left me. She had already chosen him. And now, I was done. Claire sat on the couch, face buried in her hands, sobbing like a woman who had just lost everything. But I felt nothing. I should have been heartbroken. I should have been shaking with rage. I should have wanted to scream at her until my throat was raw. But I was just empty. Maybe because I had already mourned this marriage the moment I saw her walk into that hotel with him. She was crying, gasping, shaking her head like she wanted to take it all back. But she couldn't. And I didn't want her to. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she lifted her tear-streaked face, her eyes pleading. Dan, please. Say something. I did. I want a divorce. The words hit her like a bullet. She flinched, her breath catching in her throat. No, she whispered. Dan, please. I shook my head. You don't get to beg now. You made your choice. She scrambled to her feet, grabbing my arm. But I love you. I yanked my arm away so fast she nearly fell back. Don't. My voice was dangerously low. You don't love me. You loved sneaking around. You loved the thrill of it. You loved that some young idiot made you feel wanted. Her face twisted in pain. That's not true. Then why did you do it? Silence. That same silence from earlier. The one that told me she had no real answer. Because there wasn't one. She had cheated because she wanted to. She had chosen to throw away 12 years for some pathetic fling. And now, she had to live with that choice. Deciding how to end it. I turned and walked toward the bedroom, my mind racing. Claire followed behind me. Dan, don't do this. We can work through this. Please, just think about what we built together. I scoffed, throwing open the closet. I did think about it, Claire. Every goddamn night while you were sneaking around behind my back. She let out a quiet sob. It wasn't all a lie. What we had, it was real. We are real. I pulled a duffel bag off the top shelf and tossed it onto the bed. No, Claire. We were real. She watched in horror as I grabbed my clothes and started shoving them inside. What are you doing? I zipped up the bag. Leaving. No, she gasped, stepping in front of me. Dan, please. You can't just walk away. I laughed bitterly. Funny. That's exactly what you did when you checked into that hotel. She recoiled like I had slapped her. Did you even think about me when you were with him? I asked coldly. Did I even cross your mind? She hesitated. And in that hesitation, I got my answer. I walked past her. She grabbed my hand. Dan, please. Just listen to me. I yanked my hand free. I don't have to listen to anything you say anymore. She sobbed, sinking onto the bed. I ruined everything, didn't I? I stared down at her. The woman I had loved. The woman I had trusted. Yes, I said simply. You did. Then I turned and walked out the door. Revenge, public humiliation, or a quiet exit? I sat in my car for a long time, gripping the steering wheel, my mind racing. I had 3 choices. Cold revenge, I could destroy her. Expose her to her friends, family, co-workers. Send the pictures of her and Tyler to the hospital's HR department. Ruin her reputation, make sure everyone knew who she really was. Public humiliation, I could confront her in front of everyone we knew. Call up her parents, her best friends, let them see her for the liar she was. Make her break down in front of a crowd, let her feel the humiliation I had felt. Silent exit, I could walk away with my dignity. Let her rot in the mess she made. Take my time, get the best lawyer, make sure I got everything in the divorce. Let her wonder every day how much worse it could have been if I had chosen vengeance. I turned on my phone and scrolled through my gallery, looking at the photos I had taken outside the hotel. I could send them to everyone right now. Make her pay. I hovered over the send button. Then I stopped. No. That would be too easy. Claire already knew she had lost me. But that wasn't enough. She needed to feel what I had felt, the fear, the uncertainty, the waiting. So, instead of sending the pictures, I did something worse. I waited. I let her sweat. I let her wonder what I was planning. I let her panic. The divorce papers. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I want to file for divorce, I said. And I want to do it right. She met with me that afternoon. I laid everything out, Claire's affair, the evidence I had, our financials. I want the house, I told her. Do you have a prenuptial agreement? No. She nodded. With the proof you have, we can negotiate for a favorable split. She'll likely agree to avoid embarrassment. I smiled. Perfect. Claire's breakdown. A week later, I served Claire the divorce papers at home. She looked at the envelope like it was a live bomb. Her hands trembled as she opened it, her eyes scanning the pages. Then she broke. Dan, she whispered. You're really doing this? I crossed my arms. What did you expect? She shook her head. I thought maybe we could. I raised an eyebrow. Could what? Fix this? Tears streamed down her face. I still love you. I just stared at her. Then I said the one thing that would haunt her forever. I don't love you anymore. She collapsed. I walked away. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. The aftermath. Claire tried calling me for weeks after that. I ignored every message. Eventually, I moved back into the house after she moved out. The divorce was finalized in 6 months. I got the house, most of our savings, and peace of mind. Claire? She lost everything. Her friends turned on her. Her family was ashamed of her. And Tyler? He dumped her 2 months after I left. I heard through the grapevine that she had tried reaching out to me. That she wanted to talk. I never responded. Because Claire wasn't my problem anymore. She had thrown me away. And now, I was finally done with her. It had been 6 months since I walked out of our house that night. 6 months since I served Claire the divorce papers. 6 months since I had spoken a single word to her. And I was doing fine. Better than fine, actually. The divorce was finalized last week. The house was officially mine. Claire had moved into a tiny apartment across town, and Tyler? Well, he hadn't stuck around long. I knew this because she tried to call me. A lot. Texts. Missed calls. Voicemails I never listened to. She wanted to talk. I didn't. At least, I didn't think I did until today. Today, I got a call from my lawyer. She wants to meet, he said. She's not contesting anything, so legally, there's nothing left to say. But she insists on talking to you in person. I almost laughed. She insists? Claire lost the right to insist on anything when she walked into that hotel. I understand, my lawyer said carefully. But, if I may, it might be worth hearing her out. If only to end this for good. I sat in silence for a long time. Then, against my better judgment, I agreed. The meeting. We met at a small coffee shop, neutral territory. I chose a spot near the window, where I could see her coming. Claire walked in 5 minutes late. She looked different. She had lost weight. Not in a healthy way, but in a stress has eaten me alive way. Dark circles under her eyes, hair tied back in a lazy bun, no makeup. She looked like a woman who had lost everything. She spotted me, swallowed hard, and made her way over. I didn't stand up. I didn't say a word. She hesitated, then slowly sat down across from me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she let out a shaky breath. Thank you for coming. I said nothing. She looked down at the table, fidgeting with the napkin in front of her. I don't even know where to start. I leaned back in my chair. Then don't. She flinched. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. She took another breath, trying to compose herself. I need to say I'm sorry. I tilted my head. For what, exactly? She swallowed. For everything. Be specific. She bit her lip. For cheating. For lying. For hurting you. I stared at her, waiting for more. But that was all she had. That was it? I let out a slow, humorless laugh. You don't get it, do you? She looked confused. What do you mean? I leaned forward, my voice calm but sharp. You don't get to just say I'm sorry and expect that to fix anything. Tears welled in her eyes. I know that. Do you? I scoffed. Because I don't think you have any idea what you did to me. She looked down, guilt written all over her face. Good. Let her feel it. I crossed my arms. You said you were sorry. Great. What do you want now? She hesitated. I just needed to see you. To talk. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. You lost that right 6 months ago. Her face crumpled. Dan, please. No, my voice was firm. You don't get to beg. Not anymore. She wiped at her eyes, taking a shaky breath. I don't expect anything from you. I need to explain. I almost laughed. Explain? There was nothing to explain. She made a choice. A choice that destroyed everything. And now, she wanted what? Forgiveness? Closure? Too bad. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. Go ahead, Claire. Explain. She swallowed hard. I didn't cheat because I didn't love you. I raised an eyebrow. Really? That's your defense? She shook her head quickly. No, I was lost, Dan. I was feeling empty. And I let myself do something horrible. I regret it every day. Feeling empty isn't an excuse. I know. Her voice cracked. I was selfish. I was stupid. And I wish I could take it back. I stared at her, my expression unreadable. If I hadn't caught you, would you have told me? Silence. Her lip trembled. I don't know. I let out a bitter laugh. At least you're honest about that. She wiped at her face, sniffling. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I needed to say this. I needed you to know that it wasn't about you. I tilted my head.